that is meaningful, fulfilling, and fun. We believe this phase of your life is the best time of your life. It's up to you. And we've got the show to get you there. Here's your host, Bo Henderson.
Welcome to the Retirement Resource. I'm Bo Henderson here with Dee Warmath, and we're continuing this conversation around this topic that I believe is really the key to a life well lived, and certainly a key to a successful retirement or successful retirement planning. And it's this concept of retirement clarity. And we spent the last few weeks going over different aspects, going around the components of that. And today the idea is kind of to land the plane and kind of do a summary. But Dee, as we've gone through this process, I'm curious from you, anything interesting, surprising come from us? I feel like we took this idea that we had some proof, tangible insight to be true, and it's evolved into this really nice model on how do we even approach this thing called retirement.
Yeah, and I think for me, a lot of what is the most interesting are all the things that wouldn't fit in the shows. All the other conversations that we had that led us to say these are the most important things to talk about when we're on air. But I think that there's I'm really excited about all the other things that we discovered, bringing together this financial planning perspective and this consumer science perspective, and kind of merging the two of those.
And that leads to this idea that what we've considered preparing for retirement, financial planning for retirement, that's what we call it. It might be a little bit backwards, right? Meaning, how do I accurately create a financial plan to successfully retire before I'm clear on what is that version or that definition of a retirement that works for me, right? That gives me these things we talk about it's compelling vision. And we start with compelling vision, right? Because this whole process starts with, I need to go through a process to gain clarity on what is this thing I'm transitioning to that's called retirement. Whether that's a good word for it, it needs to be changed. I don't know. I hear different thoughts on that. But it all starts with taking the time to create a vision that compels us to move forward. And the sad thing I find with face-to-face experiences, most of us just are so busy going through life that we never get that clarity to even start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that really starting with that, that perspective of how do I want to live, and not letting somebody else define that for you, but you being the one in charge of what that's going to be.
And as we go through this model, and you see the idea of how do we create this compelling vision, right? It's great for us to say these ideas, but how do we do it? We're going to talk. We talk about living an engaged life. Again, what does that mean? What are the benefits of that? And we found some nice research to show it does a lot of good things as far as what were some of the keys we found with engaged living. The decrease in cognitive decline was a big one, I remember.
Yep. Lifespan, that living longer and more health, so that you can actually enjoy life because you are engaged and have that purpose.
Right. And this idea of how do we actually do this transition? And this is what I think makes this a little different model. And there's not really this step 1, 2, 3, 4, you're finished. And it's this idea of, okay, we step back, we call it reflexive monitoring, and we assess, we learn, we give new context, and we go again. We move forward again. So what I really found fascinating about this, Dee, is that this is a living, growing, evolving model. And I think for a lot of us as people, that's what makes us happy.
Yeah. It's not a set it and forget it. It's not about you have to lock in your retirement plans by age X, and that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. It's that you do have control. You can reflect on this and see what's working for me and what's not.
And knowing that it has this reflexive nature, I think it helps us avoid, a lot of times I see a lot of being stuck or getting stuck because what if I make the wrong decision? thinking that if I make the wrong decision, I just screwed up for the rest of my life. No, you have permission to, we referred to it as experiments several times throughout this process. No, try it on, see if it fits. If it does, keep it, maybe add to it. If it doesn't, let's try something else. And sometimes I find that when we can approach these transitions or retirement in this manner of, hey, let's just get some, maybe it's more like, let's get some valuable data. I might like it. I don't know. I'm at least curious to try. Well, as we go through the whole approach we've been taking to this as kind of a methodology, is we started with this AAA approach, and we said, okay, first, when we look at this data, we look at research behind this model, what we're trying to do is just raise awareness, right? What's actually happening? What actually goes on? What are some of the statistics? What are some of the good things? What are the things we see, maybe negative things that back up these ideas we're sharing? And now that I have this new awareness, what are adjustments I might need to make? So that's the second A, awareness adjustments. What are some adjustments I might need to make with this new information, right? With better information, I believe that is the key for us to making better decisions and ultimately getting better results. So awareness adjustments, and then with adjustments, it's great to know what adjustments I should address, but that's just part of it. Then it's actions. What specific actions do I need to make those adjustments to move forward? And I think with that AAA approach to this, or that methodology, I think that gets us through. So we're not just giving good information, good research, good data, but it's also has a how-to component so that we hopefully are leaving here with what's the first step to bringing this into my life, or to creating this, or bringing it to fruition.
Yeah. And like you've said before, retirement clarity really is an important process. And the goal of it is to ensure that your final chapter of life is as enjoyable and engaging as all the other chapters in your life. And so through this AAA approach and through this process, being able to make sure that that happens.
Yeah, and we come through this idea and say, okay, what is it? And I believe that when we talk about this model of a successful retirement, the bigger goal, bigger picture, is it's really, we're shifting from what I find in dealing with people, having thousands of these conversations at this point. We're just so busy. We're busy with careers. We're busy with family. We're busy with kids, grandkids, all this stuff going on, that in a lot of cases, we're sleepwalking through life. We're very reactive. We're addressing things after they happen. And this model gives us a tool to be proactive, or be the captain of our ship, so to speak, or actually shift to a proactive model. And I think that's one of the biggest things is, as we shift into a transition, it's not near as scary if I feel like I'm driving the ship.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that, in the research that we've done, kind of just looking through the existing studies and everything else, that there are some keys that have been called out to a successful retirement life. And I think the ones that you and I kind of centered on were the sense of control, fulfillment, and mastery. Those are the three things that you should be seeking in retirement. There was one study that we reviewed. It was Journal of Aging and Health. And so, retirement in general is associated with a lower sense of control over your life than people who are working full time. And the reason comes right back to retirement clarity. The reason that they gave was that many retired people do not engage in experiences or problem-solving activities that bring fulfillment. And so that was one of the biggest challenges in retirement. And mastery, which is really the sense of degree to which you have a sense of control. So it kind of comes back to control, or that proactive, not reactive, like you were saying. And that's a very important psychological outcome in life. And so in a study in the Journal of Vocational Behavior that we found, that personal sense of mastery or control mattered in how well somebody adjusted to retirement years. And so that pre-planning, that being in control of you deciding, gaining that retirement clarity, how are you going to live out your retirement days in this engaged living? I think that's really big. And one last one that I'll share, Bo, was the preventive medicine study. It was 13,000 participants in the health and retirement study that really reinforced this idea of personal control, but they took it further, the reduced risk of mortality, improved physical health outcomes, lower risk of stroke, lung disease, physical limitations, cognitive impairment, chronic pain, higher rated health, self-rated health. So really this shift from reactive to proactive and gaining control and being able to find your own retirement, how you're going to live in retirement through retirement clarity, seems to be well supported from the academic literature.
No, and I love that. If you look at that control, fulfillment, and mastery, that is exactly what these steps help us achieve, because it takes away the how do I do it, right? That sounds great. That research sounds great, does some good things, but this method, this process is like, okay, we start here. We spend some time creating a compelling vision, and we kind of go around, and then we see some of this evidence or research that backs up that also is the antidote or the answer to having this control, fulfillment, and mastery in our life that so many people feels missing. And we could do a whole nother show on the dark side of retirement and some of the things that go the other way when we don't have those things in our life. Right? And one thing is, we kind of want to backtrack for a minute. So one of the things is, let's go back to kind of this idea of what's an idea to get us to planning this year in the context of our model, and we'll go back through that here in a minute. But the idea of how do we plan a life well lived or a successful life in retirement? And these were a couple of ideas I had come up recently as I was sharing with you, Dee. I recently got a calendar, and for me, visually, with all the things with work and my daughter and all the things going on that are competing, this calendar has the whole year on one page. Right. And I was mapping out visually, trying to intentionally create a successful year. And a couple of suggestions I had that I thought made sense for this model and us planning out that fit right into the retirement clarity planning perfectly was and it's the perfect time of year for us to be talking about this, right? Is that we should go into a year with one big goal. And that goal could be to accomplish something, right? Write that book, finish that project, do that speech. It could be to enhance a skill set, but one big goal that at the end of the year, you look back and say, I accomplished something. Because I think the older we get, we see more and more, we have less new things we've done, new things we've accomplished, and that sense of growth and ongoing learning has a lot of beneficial effects. So one big goal, right? I think you can imagine that is, I think most people say, yeah, that makes sense. That's a good thing. But if we're not intentional about it, we say, okay, towards the end of the year, I'm going to plan my goal for next year. You know, as well as I do, Dee, we'll blink and 5 years has gone by and we didn't have a big goal. We didn't have a big shift.
Right. Yep, exactly.
And so one big goal, and the other idea I like is we're planning out, let's say we're going into next year, we're planning out new things. And this what I was doing was new things every other month, meaning what I was just talking about is the older we get, I believe unique experience or new experiences. We kind of get, we go to the restaurants we like, we might vacation at the place we like, but intentionally planning on creating, whether it's quarterly or every other month, creating some new experiences. And it could be as simple as trying a new restaurant. It could be going to a new country. It could be on the other end of the spectrum, but trying some new things, because one of the things I can tell you is that those new experiences lead to that fulfillment that we keep getting over and over again of people wanting this fulfilled life in retirement. So I think those are just a couple of to-dos maybe, and it makes your brain start thinking, if I'm going to focus on one thing this next year, what should I put my energy and effort into? And then it kind of stretches your thinking too, to think, okay, I need to come up with a quarterly, as an example, new activity. And for me, I love trying to be as efficient as possible. So a lot of my new experiences are combining creating a memory, doing something, creating a memory with the people I care about. So I'm trying to kind of bundle them in and get as much juice out of that new thing as I can. Right.
Yeah. And you never know where those are going to come from. Like I was in, some of my students and I got some papers accepted to a conference in the Netherlands this summer. And I went over there and they wanted to do a tour and I had some work to do. So I just went and sat at a cafe, and a woman came and sat down at the table next to me. And in her retirement, she just decided to come. She was from Australia, and she just decided to come and see what Europe was like. She hadn't been before. And then she and I just had this fantastic hour-long conversation about the world. We solved all the world's problems. Have a great time learning about each other's perspectives. So I think that those new experiences can be something that just comes in your environment and interacting with somebody new, or they can be her picking up and taking this trip by herself. She just went by herself. I was so impressed.
And I think you brought up a good point too, Dee, is just being open to these experiences. You could have just said, you know what, I'm gonna recharge and stay in my hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you out, open. You were open enough looking for somebody to approach you to start talking, right?
Yeah.
Because you're right. I think that's fascinating. Sometimes when you find the unique experiences and the simplest day-to-day things, it's kind of fascinating to me. So I think being open to experiences and new things is pretty important. So let's shift a little bit to talking about what are we going to do creating this phase of life with intention. Again, a lot of this sounds good, but when we do this, and I know one of the things you talked about a lot, earlier in another show, was this idea of health span. Let's kind of review that again, because I think that's key.
Yeah. Well, it's basically the idea. It's not really how long you live. It's how long you live healthy enough to enjoy life. So thinking about health span and not just lifespan, certainly not a concept I came up with, but I think a very interesting one to think about. How are you going to be physically and mentally prepared to enjoy all the phases of your life? And yes, we think about retirement as a phase where disease and decay. And I heard one of my friends saying that once you get past 60, that's all you've got to look forward to. But I think that there are other opportunities, and we have to recognize those things can affect people in other chapters of life as well. So it's not just something that we have to watch for in retirement, but I think it is important throughout your life to think about what are the choices that you're making that are going to extend your health span. So you do have the physical and mental abilities to enjoy life in retirement and everything you've put forward.
And I think everybody kind of has that idea, right? It's that nobody likes, if they've had a family member or someone close to them that they've seen unhealthy and not living, right? And it's this idea of why you're active, why you're healthy, and can we do things with that? I remember some other data that was with a assessment that I used a while back. That the results of that study was that the number one determinant of retirement satisfaction or success, in another word, was health. Right? It's like, I could have $10 million in the bank, be able to do anything I want, but if I'm too sick or if I'm bedridden, it doesn't matter. Right? And I think that goes back to the conversation of proactive, reactive. If I want to have a healthy, successful retirement, what are some proactive things that maybe some of those goals should be? Maybe it's a health goal, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe that should be built in year to year. It's funny. It's right now, for the last 2 weeks, I've been working on a fasting protocol, right? Because I realize that if I don't do things to be healthier, you pay a price later. Right. Not the funnest thing to do.
No.
Right? But I believe long term it's a good investment and it's a good thing to be working on better physical health. So I think sometimes that can be a component if you're trying to think, where do I start? Maybe for most people, what I find is there's a memory goal, a lot of times associated with travel, maybe a financial goal and a health goal. Those are low hanging fruit to start thinking about. Most people can improve in all those areas. Maybe a relationship goal.
Right. And I think you're right. And I think that's part of that maintaining control over your life. It helps you in that area and mastery and fulfillment, but not letting the body and the mind fail you to the extent that you can do things there. And it involves activity, eating, sleep. So I've never slept in my entire life. But that's one of the things that I'm working on now is how do I get myself into a better sleep cycle, stress management, and also healthcare, right? How are you engaging in the healthcare system in effective ways to where you get these experts to help you manage your health and maintain that, maximize your health span?
Right. Again, are you proactively addressing things? Because I promise you, if we all just wait, eventually something will happen that we have to address.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So great. And if we can see if we draw up the image one more time, let's just kind of review one more time, Dee. Let's start with, if we had to say, how do we start this process, and what's been missing? How do I take control of this? Starts with a compelling vision.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it starts with a compelling vision. It could start with plan for engaged living, right? Because it's possible that your compelling vision comes from a collection of things that you want to do to stay engaged in retirement. And then you put those things together and say, how am I going to do this? What kind of life am I going to have? So I think, yes, it could start with compelling vision, but some people have a harder time seeing the big picture right away. And so it's totally fine if you start with the plan for engaged living, or maybe you start with some reflexive monitoring and you look at some of the things in your life before retirement and say, what do I want to continue? And what are some of the things I might want to let fall away?
So this model is even more flexible. We can enter at any point,
Mhm.
right? Because I like the idea of reflexive monitoring, taking an inventory. Where are we? What do I like about it? What do I not? What do I want different as a start? So we could literally start at any point in this model, depending on where you are.
Yeah, maybe not the transition and onboarding plan, although you
Yeah.
could think about how you were going to do that, but that one might be easier once you know what you're going to do.
Right.
But yeah, but remembering that transition and onboarding is not a cake on the last day of your work. That's what happens the next day.
Right. The what do we call it? The manual, the
The
kind of like the employee
orientation.
manual. Yeah, the
Yeah.
orientation, right? The orientation manual. So how do you transition into retirement, right?
Mhm.
I hope this, as we've talked through this, and we've gone through a lot of these things. There's some of the language that's come up. You'll hear me say sleepwalking a lot. I love it when Dee said zombie or retirement zombie, and the whole point of this is we have a choice. And are you going to be a retirement crusader, or somebody that goes into it, controls with intention, controls their path, is in charge, or are we going to sleepwalk and be a retirement zombie? Right. I love that language. I think that should be pictures. If we do turn this into a book, maybe that's the cover. Right. The
Right.
crusader with a sword
Yeah.
and the zombie.
Right.
Because I can, again, this is just, I've had the unique seat from the last 24 years of the work I do in retirement planning is the majority of people are reactive. They show up, or they raise their hand, or they deal with things after something happens. It's completely normal, right? But I think when we're aware of what happens and we step back and have some conversations, we can make that shift to be proactive, and we can be the better side of a lot of these negative statistics we see anyway. We
Mhm.
can improve the statistics. How about that?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of, as we kind of wind down, any kind of parting thoughts about this. I'm really excited that over this course of a lot of conversations, a lot of weeks, a lot of months, really, a lot of research, a lot of teams pulled together a lot of this information on this, is that we have this model to help us think and help us create a process and an ongoing process to grow, to stay in control, and to have a successful retirement. Dee, what do you think?
I think so. And I think that what I hope that it does is it helps people think about retirement not as something to be avoided or to be backed into, but as the stage of your life where you really get to call the shots. That's the part of your life where you get to say what and when and who and how and all those things, right? Because you don't have all those other people in your life telling you how things have to be done and when they have to be done. So it should be one of the most exciting parts of your life. And I hope that retirement clarity also has that kind of sense of agency that goes along with it, that pulls people into retirement.
No, I love that. And I think you're right. I love that for the first time a lot of us, we grew up, we had authority figures growing up. We had bosses throughout our career. Now we're here.
Yeah.
Now I'm 60 something years old, maybe or younger, maybe a little older, but now I'm in charge.
Mhm.
But it's up to you. What do you do with it? And I hope this gives some good points to think through, process. We do have tools, a lot of the tools that we've rolled out about how to create the compelling vision, some of the things to think through, work through. They'll be at the retirementresourceshow.com. You can check in there and find those. We're going to work on some follow-ups to this. So keep an eye out as far as the idea is that we turn this concept into a book and potentially a workbook to help people actually continue to have this to revisit as you maybe take some time out yearly or quarterly or whatever makes sense to get your retirement clarity. And my role and goal as a retirement professional in the financial planning world is that I hope that we're doing where I believe our industry needs to go to, and it's helping people first get clear on that meaningful, fulfilling, intentional life that you're in control of. And then and only then do we have the context to create a financial plan to know how to be in integrity with that. And I think that's the piece that's been missing. And I think we're going to see a lot more people doing a lot of amazing things in retirement now because now they're in control, Dee. All right.
That would be wonderful.
So nice work. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for hanging with us through this concept. Go to the retirementresourceshow.com, plug in there. You'll see more stuff coming out about this concept. If you need help with us, from us, have questions about this. And one of the things I would love to start seeing as we continue this conversation is I would love seeing your ideas so far. Doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't even have to be what you end up doing. But what are your ideas so far about some retirement clarity? What is some of the things that you've thought about, you're curious about, or even you're excited about? Because a lot of times what I found is when we start sharing those ideas, it gives other ideas to other people going through the same transition, having the same conversation. So I look forward to continuing the conversation, and we'll see you soon with a lot more right here on the Retirement Resource. Thanks, Dee.